up, people? It's podcast time. Here we go, everybody. It's a Friday day show for Sam and I. We've got a super special guest, and we're going to introduce him in here in just a second. We're Almost Agreement, almostagreement@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. While you're there, check out all the cool stuff we got. Holloroo 25 is upon us, May 17th. Come race the Derby car with us. Sell some cool wares if you vend things. We've got a number of political figures and organizations who are participating this year as vendors. If you want to get in on that, we're running out of those kind of spaces. But anyway, almostagreement.com or holloroo.co to deal with some Holloroo stuff. Go to your favorite podcast provider, like, friend, share, follow, do all that kind of stuff. We're there. Tell your friends about us. Text it to people. We're going to keep doing our shows and talk about the things that we talk about, and we hope you enjoy it. We'll get this intro out of the way, and we'll get started in just a second. Hi, Fran.
Hey.
How you do?
I be.
All right, that's the important part of the show out of the way. And as I alluded to in the intro, our very special guest, basically I just trapped Scott here after taping his show. I duct tape his legs to the leg of the chair that he sits in, and so he's just stuck. So we're going to steal his attention. Scott, how are you doing, friend?
I'm restrained in a basement. So how do you think I am?
I mean, it sounds like a normal Friday for a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't know, for our show when we can, and we got a guest and just hang out. We just talk about whatever we talk about as per usual. I had nothing that was jumping out other than I guess we'll use you a little bit to talk about. Did you actually sit through the whole State of the State?
I did.
How?
Lots of caffeine.
I try so hard. I try to watch city council meetings. I try to watch county commission meetings. I try to watch the State of the Union. It's just about 7 minutes in, I'm just like, I can't anymore because all these weird dramatic pauses and applause breaks, and part of it's my own. Part of it is I don't understand it as a functional portrayer of information, because there's so much inside baseball that if you don't know it, you don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's for people to keep up.
Right.
I mean, those things are. I mean, they just are.
And it sucks because I try to keep up, and I still don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, and the especially with the State of the State, with the state budget is big. It's almost $60 billion. They do a lot of different things, covers a lot of ground, and they try to make as many, whoever the governor is. It's not necessarily Bill Lee. Bill Haslam did the same thing. Phil Bredesen did the same thing. They all get out there and try to make their political points too. So they're going to emphasize the things they want to emphasize, and they're going to ignore the things that they'd rather you not know about.
Right. Yeah, we're not going to say anything about the tragically underfunded X, Y, or Z, because that's not what I'm celebrating today. I'm celebrating the things that I'm spending money on that I like.
Yeah, and what here's an example. He went through the State of the State address, and they really didn't talk about revenues. He talked about how he's going to spend money. Here's what I'm going to do for the state. Here's what I'm going to spend on education. Here's what I'm going to spend on nuclear energy in East Tennessee. Here's what I'm going to spend on roads. He's extra $1 billion for transportation stuff. One of the things that he didn't say that his Jim Bryson, the finance commissioner, said the next day in a committee hearing in the legislature when he was going through the budget is Tennessee's tax revenues, because of the tax cuts that have gone through in the last few years. The state tax revenues have leveled off. They're just level, basically. They're anticipating only 2% growth this year, and one of the reasons it's level is those tax cuts. Even though we're one of the fastest growing states in the country as far as population goes, we got a lot more people coming in, a lot more economic activity, higher gross domestic product, but our tax revenues are just relatively flat. So that's one of the things that he did not really talk about.
Right. Just kind of left that part out.
Yeah.
And I guess okay. So I here's the inside, the scoop that I would be curious is, do we have any sense of his future political plans, or is he going to just ride off into the sunset after a couple more years and call it a political career?
I have not heard anything. Of course, he could. About the only thing that
I mean, he could just trade places with Marcia, right?
yeah, he could. That would be, if he wants to stay in elective office, that would be something to do. One of the things though is, a lot of people don't want to go to Washington. I mean, that's one of the reasons Blackburn says that she wants to run for governor. I mean, she's got one of the most secure Senate seats in the country right now. She's one of President Trump's darlings in the Senate. She is a MAGA supporter from to the nth degree. She's, I think, the third most conservative member of the Senate by one measure, and but she's going to come back here and go to and be the governor. At least she wants to be. She wants that, and one of the reasons she said is she wants to be back home. She doesn't. It's the life of senators and congressmen, representatives spend a lot of time in airports. They're flying to and from Washington. That gets old. So I don't know if Lee is interested in doing it. If he wants to stay in politics, that's one thing. He's also a very wealthy man and can just, go back to either running his company or just kicking up his feet and doing those kinds of philanthropy things that
retired politicos do.
He could be Victor Ashe and become an ambassador to another country.
He could.
Very well. Really hit me up. I can start doing a podcast.
Like, hey, you're going to pay me this much for 4 years to go live in another country and be a representative? Sure. Just don't pick an odd company.
Right, give me a cool country to go to at least.
Yeah, cool country. You've got diplomatic immunity.
Yeah.
U.S. Virgin Islands, absolutely.
Well, no, that wouldn't count. There's not a...
That's a U.S. territory. The British Virgin Islands.
Yeah, there you go. Spend it, live and do everything in the U.S. version, but just puddle jump over there to do a little bit of work.
Spend your American dollars when they're high.
Yeah, so I don't know. There's already some stuff going on in the state legislature that I have my eyes on, mostly personal issues, and then a couple other ones. And I think it's some of the stuff that I find interesting that comes local too. Is like I have a particular aversion to this real-time crime center thing. I have concerns. Now legally, I understand. There's no legal questions at play here. It's I have no right to privacy if I'm walking on the street down Broadway or whatever. But I really struggle with it. And there's a Lamberth bill that's adding a few more things for policing in the state that I'm rather concerned with. I guess a better way to make this into a question, other than complaining about what I want to complain about, is there anything that you've seen so far? I know you don't get to spend a lot of time on state stuff, but is there anything in the state legislature that you've seen so far that you find particular that isn't what we just did in the special session?
There
maybe stuff that's going to be more specifically affecting to us here in Knoxville, Knox County.
Well, there's not a lot yet, and here's why. A lot of bills that are initially filed, a lot of them are caption bills. Where that
should be illegal. I hate that phrase, and I hate saying it, but yes, the idea that should be illegal. It's so stupid. And almost a lot of those bills get amended. I'll give you one example of something that could affect local governments here. Is State Representative Elaine Davis, who represents Knox County, a portion of Knox County, has a bill. She's mine.
Yeah, she has a bill about public forums in public meetings at local government level.
She does what is that specifically? Is there something about her that I missed when I met her about how she wanted to go to the state to mess with local governments? Like it seems like that what she's done most of at least her signature work for and I don't mean this necessarily derogatorily. I just it seems factual that most of her stuff that she's put her name on as a original sponsor on has been stuff that is specifically coming back to local government interaction.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do one of her not an aide, but an advisor, informal advisor, worked on her campaign. It's Eric Wider, who is from Knoxville. He is a very conservative political. Saying he's a political operative, it sounds pejorative, but he works on campaigns. He's very conservative. He was the architect essentially of the change in the elections that we had.
The city stuff,
the city's doing, and
which philosophically I totally agree with personally.
But the thing about this bill that's interesting is, as it's written now, it is exactly the way that City Council and County Commission already operate, and it's about public forum. What the state's Open Meetings Act allows you to, or requires that you, if you have a public meeting, voting public meeting, you have to allow people to come and speak on specific agenda items. The city and the county here both have another public forum. They do that, but they also have another public forum time where you can go and talk about anything. It doesn't have to be an agenda item.
Which our former resident Todd Furmeyer was a big fan of, getting on there and just kind of pointing out non-agenda item stuff about that may or may not have some conflict of interest on fundraising for their campaigns. That was he was at every meeting, and at that tail end open forum, truly open forum session, he'd always speak something on that nature.
Well, and every city and every county that does this, they have some regulars,
right,
who go there and rant about whatever it is they want to rant about.
I mean, I have issues with 5G towers, but the bill as it's written, Davis's bill would basically require that of every governmental body. Well, City Council and County Commission already do it, but here's the but: is that there's talk that it'll end up getting amended, and it would allow people who are speaking on an agenda item to go off topic and talk about anything they want. And when they're given the floor for the period of time, as long as they start with the agenda item, then go wherever they want.
You may not even, depends on how they end up amending the bill.
Right.
If it does get amended, how they amend the bill, they could amend it any way they want. And and that's there's really while that public forum time at the end of the meeting, is a good place for people to go and air their grievances with the local government, or ask the government to do something if it's not on the agenda.
And it puts it on record.
Puts it on the record. The members of the body sit there, and they've got to sit through and listen. They may be bored. They may glance down at their phones a little more often, but they've got to be there, and and that's fine. Where the issue would be when you're addressing an agenda item, being able to go off topic. That happens. That happened a lot during the period of time where there were a lot of protests over the Israeli invasion of Gaza.
Right. One in the city, which I don't know. This is. I'm the bad guy here. I get it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The city of Knoxville has zero effect on what the federal government is doing as it concerns our foreign affairs stuff. And I understand that you're upset and you want to talk to somebody and you want to say it out loud. But man, that's frustrating. When, again, joking from the beginning, like, I try to watch these things and I want to be involved and I want to pay attention, but I don't want to sit and listen. Like, one of the things that got me probably more into paying attention to politics than anything else was understanding what body does what. Mm-hmm. Like, what, the city of Knoxville has authority to do blank.
Right.
And that authority in this particular one would be to write a letter to the president. Yeah, that's not really a valued use of the time, in my opinion, I suppose. And that's what drove me nuts about those. And certainly, to back up and get back to your point, is the bill that Elaine's putting up. I'm sorry, Sam. Do you want to?
Is this that same bill that we talked about a few weeks ago that I was pushing back on because I thought it was kind of taking out, I guess, notification of open meetings for I think that maybe had to do with like property and zoning. Okay,
that was public notices.
That was public notices. Okay.
Yeah, and it's a different bill, but those have always had to go to newspapers, and very few people read newspapers anymore. So.
That's true.
Well, because there was a big stink a couple years ago when Knox County shifted from which newspaper they were doing, and whether that was for something other than just the required. They have to put it somewhere. Yep. But if they're going to put it somewhere, they might as well put it with a friend, right?
And they did. It's in Knoxville Focus now.
Yeah. So what's that? What's that? So is it going to let it go digital or what? What's the plan on that bill? I don't remember.
Don't worry. I don't think there was any specifics on it. I think
if they let it go digital, Compass should.
In my reading of it, I just didn't like the idea, I guess, of less public notices, especially when you're talking about rezoning, chunks of the county.
Well,
they put up like those little black signs that are like, rezoning meeting on this date.
Well, one of the things that a lot of Republicans don't like about the way they do public notices is they do go to newspapers and they. Now have a universal loathing for print journalism, and so that's there is money there,
right? To give credit where it may or may not be due, though, there is something to say. Like I'm sure you probably know it, at least a ballpark of how much less people are getting the paper.
It's
and so if it's to be an effective means of getting the notices out to the public, I don't know that the newspaper really is that anymore anyway.
Well, that's the argument to make against it, and to make against, or not again, make for coming up with other ways to do it. You're right. I mean, I don't know what the news circulation numbers are, but it's. I've heard, but I'm not going to repeat it because I don't know.
They've been begging me. I get calls because after I canceled mine, I get a call a month.
It wasn't that long ago when I worked there that circulation on Sundays was well over 100,000, and I would say it's a lot less than that now.
Right. Because like I said, I had Sunday, like we had the Sunday only. And so I got the digital, which was more useful to me anyway. And like I quit that like a year and a half ago, and at least once a month, if not twice a month, it's like $2.50 for 3 months, $2.50. You're that desperate to get it in my hands, and because they need to sell the ad space. I mean, that's all they're trying to do. But it's just like that's good for me, I guess, if I pull the trigger and get a cheap newspaper again. But it's just like all I did is end up stacking in my corner anyway. I got all my news from Compass mostly, but even that, it's like there's 10,000 other places that I can get it, and it's on my phone or it's on my computer where I spend more FaceTime anyway.
Yeah, I wonder what their online subscriptions are compared to print.
Oh, they're doing pretty well online. The in most legacy newspapers are. Oh yeah. They'll say, things like, more people read our news than ever before, which is true. They're all reading it online, right. Which doesn't do much for your bottom line in the newspaper business. Because when I started out in the newspaper business, if you were a publicly traded newspaper company, in which the only ones I worked for, the expectation was that you would have a 20% return every year, and the 80% of your revenues came from advertising, and only 20% came from circulation, and that's why they practically gave the newspaper away back then,
right?
And and so they got all the revenues from ads. When
I mean, back in the 90s, when I was a paper boy. When I still lived in Wisconsin, I'm pretty sure the only reason that they charged for the paper was to pay us,
pretty much
to get it to your doorstep.
Yeah. Well, the way the numbers worked. I mean, they didn't slice it up this way necessarily. Basically, the way it works was that advertising paid all your bills, did everything. Your profit was circulation. So I mean, that's just pure profit,
right?
Circulation. Well, now that Craigslist came along, there are no classified ads anymore, except public notices. And people, the advertising dollars just moved away from print. And so they've had to charge more for papers. They still make money off of that, or they wouldn't do it at all. But it's a lot less than they used to make.
Well, sure. And when they say, this is my take on why they're so desperate to give me a subscription for next to nothing, is that they say we have X number of subscribers
Absolutely.
when they're going out and do their ad sales.
That's how they set their ad rates.
Right. So. It's like this many people get it.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want it, but we give it to them anyway.
Yeah, and
can you guarantee they're reading it? No.
Well, and one thing is, it's getting harder to sell ads like that too, because when you sell like digital ads, you know exactly how many people.
And you could be very specific on who you're sending it to.
With the newspaper, they just assume that if the circulation is, if you've got a newspaper circulation's 30,000, they assume. Well, they do a little bit of market research too, but that those 30,000 people look at every page,
right? Which is totally false. It has always been false, but that's still.
I don't know. I used to read every page.
Yeah, but I was
a nerd,
right? So. Yeah, I was like back when I was a kid in my parents' house, and my dad got the paper before or after I worked for that particular paper. I got the sport. I'd go through it was front page and sports section, and maybe comics. That was about all I did on the regular. But I was also a teenager at that point, so the fact that I read a newspaper at all was weird.
Yeah, and
other than the comics.
Now it's so, it's so fragmented that the newspapers will never, even the newspaper websites people don't read them the way they used to read newspapers.
Right.
That's because, I get my sports news from The Athletic, which is now the New York Times' sports page. But that's where I get my sports news. I don't read sports news in the News Sentinel, their website. I don't read, every now and then I might go to ESPN for something. But you go to different websites for different things. I don't get any national news from any local.
It's more specified. And then the inverse is happening too, is where what do we have? We really only have at least in print news, we only have 3 companies really that own all the locals.
Well, there are more than 3, but it's small.
Right.
It's a lot smaller than it used to be.
Because News Sentinel is part of the USA Today network. How many local papers?
Gannett,
right, and how many local papers do they own?
They own the lion's share of it. They're the largest chain in the country. And and there are a couple of things. First of all, these chains buy up newspapers, and then a lot of on the other end, especially smaller towns and counties, their newspapers just shut down.
Yeah,
they can't afford to stay in business. So
my father-in-law was
so they're not. They're gone. Those are true news deserts where they have no clue if they don't go to the city council meeting. They have no clue as to what their city council's doing.
Right, because the Knox News Sentinel is not going to Kingston to cover their local meetings. They just started having a regular at a lot of these different city council meetings and stuff like that too. There was a while they weren't even sending anybody or not many to all the meetings. Yeah,
they've gone back and forth a little bit on that, and they're and a lot of it comes down to these metrics that you can get by going online, and that quite frankly, the very few people will go to the News Sentinel's website or any other. I mean, don't make it sound like picking on them. It's just any website like that to read local government coverage. They don't do that anymore.
Right.
There are people who do that, but lots more people will go to the News Sentinel's website to read about UT sports. That's why when you go to their homepage, it's almost 80% UT sports.
Right. I'm still on their newsletter thing, which is just headlines and the first sentence of every story, and their top 5 stories of the day. If more than one is not UT sports, that's a weird newsletter from them.
Well, one of the things that they did, they were doing this more before I left, got laid off there in 2017. They do look at those metrics, and they do that does help drive what they cover. And so there have been times where they said, well, it's not worth it for us to send somebody to a meeting because people don't read stories about meetings. There is some truth to that. But if you don't go to meetings, it's hard for you to cover a government and what the government is doing.
Right.
I mean, so it's,
and I think, and
that's the, and that was one of the reasons we started Compass was,
there's a big gaping hole in coverage.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so we focus only on, well, not only, but primarily on local government and politics, and which is, to a large operation like Gannett or the News Channel, it's not what really makes them money, but
right.
it's a big enough audience for us to survive and do well.
Right.
Because there's no real staff. There's no, we have people, we have freelancers who do work for us now, but we don't have this big overhead and everything else. So it's a niche market now. It didn't used to be.
Yeah, it for sure. It's yeah. I don't know. It's. I think the. I will still argue to death that most people don't care about local politics or politics at large or government at large. They'll speak on it offhand, 9 out of 10, not really knowing what they're talking about. But I think there's been an uptick in real attempts at engagement in government by the public. Kind of post the introduction of Trump into the mix. I think Trump has got people paying a little bit more attention to stuff that they weren't before.
I think COVID did as well.
I think COVID did.
COVID really did.
A lot, yeah.
A lot of the decisions
right.
that were made on the local level.
Yeah.
Put
into questions like, who can make that decision?
Yeah, the whole mask mandate thing
sure.
here.
I went down that's what started me down the rabbit hole, to be 100% honest. I went to we'd started doing this a little bit, and we were already doing our show for a little while, but not very long when everything went sideways. And I went to one of the commission meetings and sat there for the 7-hour epic that it was of public forum.
Yeah,
going back to that topic, because I don't know, I could understand the complaint from a commissioner being like, listen, there's 100 people want to talk, 50 of you are going to say one thing, 50 are going to say the other thing. Can you guys just kind of go over there, talk amongst yourselves, pick 3 or 4 people to make your points? Because we understand that you're all here for that. We don't need to hear you all say you don't get to tell me if I have to wear a mask or not.
Yeah, and now they do that when they have people addressing specific agenda items.
Right.
They limit the number of speakers. They say, okay, 3 on each side, and you've got a total of 5 minutes each or whatever it is. But when it's kind of open like that, it's as many as want to speak. That's why they like having it to the end of the meetings instead of
right. Because Lars said, I think it was Lars said was heading the meeting, that meeting that I was at, and he said, he literally is like we appreciate you all here, but if your comment isn't going to be anything different than we've already heard, could you just please just pass on your turn? No, and then it just continued for hours and hours.
I want my voice heard. Okay,
and then my portion of why I was there was pushed back to after that. And then they tried to cancel my part because they were tired of being there. I was like, no, I sat through this whole thing for one reason, and you're not canceling it because you had to sit through all that crap.
Yeah, but those are unusual circumstances. COVID was an unusual circumstance. Right. The Gaza protests were in
right.
But I get the point. But to Sam's point he made earlier, talking about rezoning things. With rezoning, you say the word rezoning, my own eyes glaze over. But you have your neighbor up here at the corner, get an option on his property from Weigel's, and there's going to be a store. Weigel's is going to put a store in the corner up here. A lot of people are going to be in this neighborhood will be mad,
right?
And they won't. How do they even know what's going to happen? Like you said,
after the fact.
Like you said, there's they put a sign up,
right?
But
it's all code and weird looking.
All the sign does is it's the case number,
right?
And then you have to go to Planning Commission web. Well, at least we've got the web now. But you go to the Planning Commission website and you look it up, and you see what's up. It might be, it might be that they want to, rezone their property so they can, convert it into a duplex.
Yeah.
Or they might want to sell to Weigels if they can get the zoning done, and stuff. I mean, it's really, but you don't know.
Right. And mine gets extra funny because the property you're joking about is technically in the city where we're in the county out here, which gets even deeper.
Oh yeah.
Into the weeds.
Yeah. But I mean, but if you don't pay attention, you don't know when they're going to be doing that.
Right.
And I mean, there's a case right now. It's actually already been done, but there's a West Knox County subdivision, and company is going to develop subdivision, going to develop townhouses, which was okay to a lot of people in the neighborhood until they decided to make it a project-based Section 8 housing for low-income people. And all of a sudden, they already had the zoning done. They had the concept plan approved. Everything was already done. And they decided to do that. And these neighbors are now...
I'll say it, these NIMBYs.
They're all bent out of shape about it. Yeah. And there's nothing they can do.
I thought it was the people that signed on to move into that subdivision, that they were like, hey, we thought we were buying into a subdivision of single-family houses.
Well.
Talking about the one on Westland?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the subdivision was built in phases.
Okay, so some of it's already there. Okay.
So the first phases, the people that moved in said, yeah, we're moving into this single-family.
Yeah. Right. Because generally speaking, because my parents' house is in one of those phase neighborhoods, and they were phase one when they moved in. And generally, so that was one of the things my dad was talking about. I was like, when you get a neighborhood like this, and you're one of the first ones, by the time they build phase 2 and 3, your home value is going to go up faster than market values are raising at the same time because just the way these neighborhoods do it. And I could see like if my dad's neighborhood did the same thing, where their third phase all of a sudden became something completely different than planned, where you could be upset by that.
Well, this isn't really completely different. They decided to build the townhouses, and the people I've talked to out there said, they were okay with the townhouses when they were told that,
market rate
retirees are going to be moving in,
right?
But not those poor people.
That's my favorite. That may be my favorite, like developer generic phrase. Like there's two phrases that every developer uses like constantly. Is we're targeting older family or older adults who their kids are out. So we're not going to add to the burden of the schools nearby or whatever. Or in Randy Burleson's always, it's storage for all our extra restaurant equipment. It's like you have more buildings that you're storing restaurant equipment than you have restaurants that have equipment in them. Somewhere the math isn't adding up here, friend. Because that's what he says about mine, the one that's next to me in the holler, and then the one they bought down there in the old city. That's their official statement. It says it's storage. It's like, no, it's not. You're building something there. You just don't know yet or don't want to tell us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right. And that's fine. You could just say, I don't know yet. I'd be okay with that. But anyway.
Well, let me tell you, Randy Burleson did not spend the amount of money on that property in the old city, catty corner from the entrance to the stadium, for storage.
I know, but I see. My problem is I need
Randy.
I need his attention in the holler and not down there. And so he needs to either hurry up and start or put that plan off a couple of years so he can work on some stuff for me in the holler. I got my own agenda. He's not on board with. He doesn't know about it. I've never talked to him about it. But Randy Burleson, get on board.
He's not going to like it.
Yeah. On your show today, the most exciting thing that I'm really excited about, that Knox County Public Works project, getting out of that building down there in the holler.
Yeah, well, that a lot of things have to happen first.
I'm really excited if that's the way it's going to go.
Well, the one thing is, assuming they buy the property, the in Oakwood Lincoln Park, and they build something there, and
so this goes
most of the county's operations in the old Sears building will be able to move into that.
Right.
Not everything. One of the things is a lot of this. There's quite a bit of space in the Sears building is warehouse space for the school system.
Right.
And, of course, the school system, and here you go back to, I started this because I didn't know who did what. The school system, though it's the county school system,
they're an independent
and county
entity.
government are different.
Right.
You know, they're
well, it's because we have that.
They're the same but different. And
the whole thing with the new school in Mechanicsville is like we have this land swap between Knox County schools and Knox County, where I would think the average Joe on the street, if you asked about that, it's like, is that not the same thing?
Yeah, I know, and but it's an accounting thing. And you want to make something a little bit more confusing, is that the old rural high school property. It's first of all, it's the rural high school property. Knox County owns it, not the school board. And the building that's there, the last remnant of rural high school, is used for maintenance and storage by the school system. So,
but it's a county.
So it's an old county school, or actually it was an old
city school. Yeah,
old city school, but it's owned by Knox County. The school system actually is the tenant of that building. But anyway, what would have to happen to completely empty the Sears building out would be if the school system joins the county in this comprehensive maintenance facility in Oakwood Lincoln Park. If they do that and they move their stuff out of that the Sears building, then just about everything will be out of the Sears building. Whatever doesn't automatically move, they can find space for somewhere. So then what they would do is they would issue an RFP. They'd surplus the property, issue an RFP, and see if somebody in the private sector would buy it.
So what happens if Knox County does what they don't come to an agreement, and Knox County Schools doesn't want to come with them, but the county owns that Sears building, right?
Yeah, and well, that's when you get
the county wants to get it off their rolls, and they say, well, you don't have to come with us to this other building, but you're not staying in this building because we're getting it out and getting it back into tax.
That depends on the agreement they have with the school system. I'm not that far into the weeds on that yet.
But that's what you do. No, I'm just kidding. You're fine.
But it's well, and one of the things is that's one of the reasons that you want to have good relationships between people in the mayor's office, the school system, the school board, county commission, all that, because they really do kind of need to work together to get, for a lot of good outcomes. And sometimes they need to go through separate ways too. So, but
I mean, I wish I hate again, this is not something that I necessarily. I mean, I guess I have a voice as a voter, but I don't like that. I'm glad they're out of the AJ building, but I don't like that the school system moved to the TVA towers. I feel like that building would be better in private hands than being part on the public roster.
The TVA tower?
Yeah. Now maybe I'm sure there's stuff that's deep in there in the weeds of the cost to renovate it for a private guy to do something, or whatever was too much and it was going to sit for too long, and the city and county.
Well, people have stopped moving into, not completely, pretty much stopped moving into Class 1 office space. We don't need
business. Right.
I mean, so if I'm a developer, why would I buy that when couldn't find a tenant?
Right.
I mean,
it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to get it converted into
and
something.
I can't find a tenant.
Right. Right. Or you're going to try to convert it into residential, which as much as it feels like it shouldn't be that difficult, it apparently is really hard to move to take a commercial office building and turn it into apartments. Yes. Yeah. So short of raising it. Speaking of raising things, have they got that garage all the way down yet?
I believe so. Yeah.
I saw some pictures of them taking some stuff off that building. That's
I haven't driven by there in a while, so
I might have to make a trip this week. I haven't been down. I intentionally tried to do a drive by on the stadium, but the roads are still closed, so you can only see what little you could see from under the bridge, or on the bridge. Or
what you do is you drive around up to the Weigels, or not used to be Weigels. It's not Weigels anymore, but up at Summit Hill, and there's a convenience store there. There's a road that goes down toward the stadium side. You just go down there and park on the side of the road, and that's the best view of it.
That's the best view. Okay.
Yeah. You could just about, if you don't get tossed out for loitering, you could probably just watch a game from up there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's probably going to get tended to pretty quickly.
It may.
Yeah. But I don't know. I feel bad. I'm actually kind of getting excited about it. I wasn't like Sam was wholly against this project, and I don't disagree with his reasonings for being wholly against this project. And I think, to be fair, Scott, you were probably one of the most consistent voices of reason on why it's not that big a fucking deal. And so it's like now I've kind of shifted gears into it's like, at some point you just got to accept the fact that it's happening.
Yeah.
And if there's some joy to it, then take the joy. And there's no point in not taking the joy because you're mad that it's there. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm curious, though. Like, I was going to ask you this on your show, and I didn't want to interrupt because it was one of those. I know I come up with a lot of questions that aren't necessarily, they're not off topic per se, but they're so random that I don't want to put you on a spot where you have to say I don't know on your own show a bunch.
Thanks.
Where do you know where have they announced kind of where they're at as far as the tenants in the different units? Because there's a whole set of outward facing commercial on the stadium. And then there's the whole ground floor of the two apartment complexes kind of thing. Have they announced that they've got tenants lined up?
They have not yet. I'm sure they do have a lot of them, if not all of them.
I'm curious.
One of the only possible potential tenant that has been named, and Randy Boyd brought up the name years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever this was started going up, was that he was hoping that Jackie's Dream, the restaurant, would be able to take one of those spaces. The
great,
Nashville hot chicken. It's a Nashville hot chicken place. It used to be in East Knoxville. It's over right now, North Knoxville, across from the public safety complex.
Okay,
it's really, really good.
They were struggling for a little while.
Yeah. It was.
Great.
I think they did struggle when they first, and I don't know. It's one of the reasons I'm saying potential tenant, because that was just something that Boyd said a long time ago.
Right.
That business may have changed. They might not be able to come to an agreement. There's all kinds of things that can happen. But
I'm sure it is a significant, because I'm sure it's significant rent in the your commercial rent is fairly expensive anyway, but I'm going to bet, because it's all location. That's the number one thing in real estate. I'm going to bet for anything that goes into the one, especially the ones that are in the stadium, that's going to be a significant per square foot rental space.
Yeah, they're damn near guarantee you, hey, when this opens up, you are going to get business for at least the first 6 months to a year.
Right. You don't have the warm up period. That's for sure. But it's also, you're gonna which is a super hard thing to staff. Just as a person that's been in the bar restaurant game for a long time, it sucks trying to staff a place like that, because when they're on a home stretch, we're gonna be busy.
Yeah.
Right.
When they're not, or it's off season, you need another job because you're not going to pay the bills working for me.
Yeah. It's like the opening week of the season this year.
Yeah.
They had a 6-game homestand against the Chattanooga Lookouts. And this whole, you got 6 good days right there.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be like a week before they're back.
Right. I was looking at the schedule for Holler planning. We were trying to figure out it's not that big a deal to run against them or not. I wouldn't say opening weekend's not a weekend I want to do, which that's going to be a crazy first weekend, because that is what's the first game? April 15th.
Yeah.
The weekend before is Orange and White game on Saturday, Rossini Festival that weekend, and then there's a good number of things on the special events calendar for the city on this. I guess that'll be the 19th or whatever, that Saturday of their homestand. It's going to be a busy weekend in Knoxville. We're going to put the parking question to test very fast.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that's going to be, people are talking about the parking thing. Well, the city's going to have a parking plan. I don't know what it's going to say.
Right.
Some of it's pretty obvious. Some of it is you ain't parking garages and more rent shuttles.
Right.
Well, that's pretty obvious that has to be a component.
And I had an occasion to talk to some people at the CAT bus system. I was like, hey, we up in the Holler would be happy to be a park and ride spot if you guys want to set something. Because to me, it's just marketing.
Yeah. Whether
people use it or not, CAT will market that they have park and rides for baseball, and I'm one of the park and ride spots. So I think that would be good for.
Well, a lot of the pop-up lots that come up for UT games, how do those work? Is that just whatever business owns that and has enough space can?
Yeah. Well, All right, the city lots on game day, they have different. They're not like it's not a free weekend on a game day on city lots normally, right? On UT games.
Like
city garages that are free nights and weekends.
City garages are still
free on home games, on UT home games.
I believe so. Yeah.
Because I know,
I avoid downtown Knoxville on home games.
I don't blame you. I mean, really, what you need to do is you need to get a bike. You need a bike everywhere now. No, that's just the way to do it. Just get a bicycle. Go up to see my friend Scott. Scott, go see my other friend Scott at Wicked Hubs and get you an e-bike and get a little battery on there and have a good old time. But because that's the only way you're getting across the river anymore. You got to go. I don't. I mean, I think it makes sense, and I think if the reality is it's building a whole new bridge, if we want to ever put a car across it again, I don't see the need. It sucks for the Sevier Avenue people. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I've never bought into the South Knoxville plan. I just South Knoxville is a different city. It's not Knoxville. It always has. It's always been that way. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm having a hard time believing that it won't be. Now, this other bridge. Actually, that's a question you might know the answer to. With all this crazy shit that Trump's got going on, has the funding conversation for the footbridge? Is the city?
It's we need to wait and see what shakes out in Washington because you got Trump wanting to. I'm sure that's some of the funding that he wants to claw back, but it's going to be tied up in courts. You got all kinds of stuff. It's real uncertain right now.
I guess the better question is: does this change the timeline for the city's project, or is it just we're going to keep going until we find out otherwise?
Well, they could do a lot of stuff before without having that money in hand,
right?
But then they would have.
Right. If they're halfway there and that money doesn't come, then there's a whole different crisis.
Bridge,
right.
They've got a pier instead of a bridge.
Yeah, it'd still be a fun thing to have.
But
a big boat launch.
Yeah.
But I mean, because they've got $20 million in state money sitting in the bank right now.
Yeah.
Already allocated, I guess, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah, they've already got it. And now, if they don't build the bridge, they'll have to give it back. That's the
right.
But because they can only use it for the bridge. So it's a very. I would imagine that funding will eventually go through because it was already appropriated by Congress, already allocated by the Biden administration, and just because the checks hadn't been cut yet is not.
Right, doesn't mean it's not coming eventually.
Well, I mean, this is, the federal government has told the city of Knoxville that we are going to pay you this money so you can do this
thing, right?
And that's a contract,
right?
So, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but I would imagine that at the end of the day, now it may take 6 months. It might take a year, but eventually,
right.
I think that
we might have a stall, but we'll get there.
I think it eventually be released.
Now this one
could be wrong.
This bridge, I will continue to rage against for forever. I hate the whole thing. We're gonna break right here. Okay, so yeah, we had to take a break. Scott had an interview for his podcast. It's a fun little scheduling kerfluffle today. Right now on Saturday morning, if you're listening to this as we release. I have been up for 5 hours already to take my kid to get dropped off because he's doing a Disney trip with his middle school band thing. And then me and the missus and the other kid are going down to Chattanooga to check out the wonderful Tennessee Aquarium. Sans one kid so he could be cheaper. So thanks, Scott, for coming and hanging out. Thanks, Sam, for doing this thing. But it's just kind of the coming back after that little break as planned just didn't really materialize, and so we're gonna call it a show from there. So that's a show, everybody. No weird. All right, everybody, that's a show. Almost Agreement at gmail.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, on YouTube. The website, almostagreement.com. Check out what we got going on there. Holleroo is coming up on May 17th. Register today. There will be some exciting civic news to go with it. Here in the not too distant future, that's going to make that event bigger and better, and I'm super, super excited for it. So, thanks everybody for hanging out. Sorry for the short one. Sam and I, and maybe a guest, will be back next week for another episode of craziness. it's been just such a crazy busy week, and there's so much news, and we didn't get to talk about it. But anyway, that's what we do. So stay tuned. We'll be back. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.